Once upon a time, rain crossed the forecourt of Brackenhill Public Library in slanting lines, and Elinor Vale found a book on her workroom desk that had not been there when she locked the room the night before. It was bound in green cloth, dark with age, though its corners were sharp and untouched. There was no library plate, no accession number, no title on the spine. On its cover, in small black letters, were the words, "The Disappearance of Miss Elinor Vale." Elinor stood with rainwater dripping from her umbrella onto the tiled floor. The coal fire had not caught yet. Beyond the borrower's counter, the staff shelves waited in their narrow aisles, fresh oak still smelling faintly of varnish beneath the paper dust. She opened the book. The first page said that at 4 minutes past closing tomorrow evening, Miss Elinor Vale would pass through the staff gate and not return. The writing was hers, not merely like hers, hers. The long downward pull on the letter P, the hooked S, the habit of pressing hard whenever she wrote a date. Elinor shut the book and put it in the bottom drawer of her desk. Then she opened the library. By 9 o'clock, damp coats had gathered beneath the reading room clock. Mr. Dent from the tobacconist coughed over the morning paper. Rain striped the tall windows. Brackenhill was not a large village. It had a mill by the stream, a quarry above Chapel Road, a railway halt, and rows of houses climbing the low hills. Its library had opened 5 years before, paid for partly by a donor whose name had been cut over the entrance. The council bought the books. The trustees gave advice. Councillor Edwin Hargreaves gave plenty of both. 3 days earlier, he had stood at the counter with rain shining on his hat brim and told Elinor the trustees would decide on the permanent librarian's post before the month was out. "You keep a respectable room," he had said. Records require more than a respectable room. His meaning had been plain. Elinor's father had been a stationer, not a scholar. She was 29. She had become acting librarian after the library's founder died, and because his widow, Mrs. Bell, had told the trustees that Elinor knew every shelf and every borrower in Brackenhill. Hargreaves wanted a man sent from town, someone with fresh catalogue cards, uniform labels, and no family buried in the parish churchyard. Elinor wanted the post anyway. She wanted the books to stay where she put them. She wanted dates to mean what they said. She wanted one room in Brackenhill where a missing thing could be named instead of explained away. At 10:30, Peter Knoll, a clerk from the mill, came to the counter. "The old quarry book, Miss Vale. My mother says it has the names." Elinor found the entry in the reader catalogue. Brackenhill, a parish record. Shelf mark L17. She passed through the narrow staff gate, went to the local shelf, and drew out the gray volume. It was not the book she expected. The title was the same. The binding was the same. Yet this copy was thicker, and its printer's mark belonged to a firm Elinor had never heard of. She turned to the quarry accident of 1903. The account was short. On the 14th of May, a fall of stone killed Samuel Bell, quarryman, aged 31, who entered the lower path to draw a girl clear of the slide. The girl's name was Ruth Vale. Elinor read it twice. Her sister Ruth had died in the quarry accident. She had been 11. Samuel Bell had carried her home after the fall. He had lived another 6 years, long enough to marry, long enough to have a daughter called Mara, long enough for his widow to sit every afternoon beneath the reading room clock with the newspapers folded on her lap. A small violet slipped from the book and landed beside Elinor's shoe. It was pressed flat and dry, its purple faded but visible. A narrow label lay with it. Quarry path, 14th May, 1903. E. Vale. Elinor had been 13 that spring. Scarlet fever had kept her in bed for weeks. Her father had left the medicine bottle on the washstand and counted every spoonful. She looked again at the label. E. Vale. Peter Knoll cleared his throat at the counter. "Miss Vale?" Elinor closed the volume. "I'm afraid this copy is under repair," she said. "I'll find you another." There was no other. She spent her dinner hour in the workroom, with the accession ledger open beneath the window. An accession number told a librarian when a book had entered the collection. Or it ought to. Brackenhill, a parish record, bore the number 0041. The library's ordinary stock began at 0187, after the founder's private donation had been entered. This book claimed it had arrived before the library had its shelves, before the front steps had been laid. Elinor checked the reader catalogue. L17. Then she checked the shelf list, the handwritten volume that recorded the order of books in the staff stacks. L16. Brackenhill Parish Sermons. A blank line. L18. Brackenhill, a parish record. There should have been an entry between them. Instead, a pale, narrow gap showed where a line had been rubbed away. Her first thought was Hargreaves. He had access to the trustees' room. He had made a performance of asking to inspect the catalogues. He had reason to make her seem careless. A forged history, an altered shelf list, a book planted in her workroom. It was absurd. It was also human, which made it easier to bear. At 3 o'clock, Mrs. Agnes Bell came in for the evening newspapers. She was small and white-haired, and wore a black bonnet even indoors. Her husband, Samuel, had helped found the library before he died. Everyone said he loved lists. Lists of donated books. Lists of unpaid subscriptions. Lists of borrowers who promised to return things by Friday. Mrs. Bell saw the violet on Elinor's desk. She stopped. Her gloved hand closed around the counter rail. "Where did you get that?" "It was in a local history." Mrs. Bell did not touch it. "Has the clock begun losing 4 minutes again?" Elinor looked toward the reading room. The round clock above the newspaper rack showed 3 minutes past 3. "I haven't noticed." "You will." "Mrs. Bell, what is this?" The old woman's face tightened. Not with surprise, with weariness. "Your father used to say records were kinder than memory," she said. "He was wrong. Records can be made to behave." Then she collected her newspapers and went to her usual chair. Elinor watched her go. The founder's desk stood against the workroom wall. Its upper drawer had been locked since Samuel Bell's death. Mrs. Bell kept the only visible key and had always said it held private accounts. That evening, after the borrowers left and rain ticked at the windows, Elinor found another key taped beneath the desk. Her father had taught her where stationers hid things. Not in drawers, under surfaces, behind labels, inside false bottoms. The drawer opened with a dry scrape. Inside were shelf lists tied in bundles with faded blue tape. Elinor untied the first. The hand on the pages was hers. She sat down. It was not merely similar. It was hers, though some entries looked years old and some looked freshly written. Every list used the same local classifications. Every one contained the same space between L16 and L18. But on every sheet, the space had been filled. Different ink, different pressure, different entries. One read, L17, Bell, Samuel. Quarry statements. Another read, L17, Vale, Ruth. School prize essays. A third had been crossed through so hard that the nib had nearly cut the paper. Ruth Vale, returned from quarry. Under the bundles lay a note. Do not trust the volume that calls itself tomorrow. Read who is absent. Elinor took a lamp into the staff shelves. The library had closed, but the building never became still. Pipes knocked behind the walls. The fire shifted in its grate. Rainwater ticked through the guttering outside. She searched behind the parish almanacs and found 5 slim green volumes. Each carried a shelf mark that should not have existed. F0. Each bore a year later than the present one. 1912, 1914, 1917. Elinor opened the first. It described Brackenhill after the quarry closed. Ruth Vale appeared as the schoolmistress at St. Anne's. Samuel Bell was dead. His widow had moved away. There was no mention of Mara. Elinor opened another. In that one, Ruth had died as Elinor remembered. Samuel Bell had lived. Mara Bell had won a prize for reciting a poem at the chapel fete. The violet fell from both books. The same flower. The same crease across one petal. The same little label. Quarry Path. 14 May 1903. E. Vale. She checked the book about her disappearance when she got home. A new page had appeared. It showed her in the local stacks with 2 books in her hands. Below it, in her own writing, were the words, "One record must be entered before the bell is done." The final page was blank. Mrs. Bell was waiting outside the library the next morning. She carried no newspapers. "You found the drawer," she said. "Yes. Then you know enough to hate me." "I know there are shelf lists in my hand that I don't remember writing." Mrs. Bell looked past her toward the wet street. "My husband found the first volume while sorting donations. He thought it was a forgery. Then he found another copy of Brackenhill, with people alive in one and dead in the other." "What did he do?" "He made a place for it." The gap. The shelf list has to settle somewhere. A book entered there remains. The others lose their hold. Elinor held up the Violet's label. "And me?" Mrs. Bell looked at it for a long moment. "You have stood before that shelf before, Miss Vale. More than once, I think. You chose the village that still held the people you could see. Then the library took the choice from you. Why? Because a person who remembers what was removed may try to put it back." Elinor thought of Ruth's name cut into paper. She thought of Mara Bell, 9 years old, waiting at the counter with her library ticket folded in both hands. "In the book where Ruth lives," Elinor said, "Mara isn't born." Mrs. Bell nodded. "Samuel dies before he marries." "You knew." "I knew enough." "You let this happen." Mrs. Bell did not defend herself. "No," she said. "I kept the room open." The following evening, Mara came in 10 minutes before closing. She wore her brown school coat, too short at the wrists, and carried a coin purse with no coins in it. "Miss Vale, have you got anything about wildflowers?" Elinor looked at the child. Mara's front tooth was loose. She kept touching it with her tongue. "I have a small book," Elinor said. Wait here. Behind the staff gate, 2 editions lay on the work table. One gave Ruth an ordinary life. At 29, she taught children their letters at St. Anne's. Elinor had read Ruth's name until it blurred. There was a birthday cake in one paragraph. Damp boots by a schoolroom stove in another. A pupil had written Ruth a note in crooked pencil and tucked it into a copybook. The other edition held the Brackenhill Elinor knew. Ruth dead, Mara alive. The clock showed 5 minutes to 6. Councillor Hargreaves arrived with 2 trustees behind him, carrying an envelope. "Miss Vale," he said, "the appointment papers. We'll require the local histories for inspection before you leave." He had no idea what waited beyond the gate. He looked irritated by the rain, the late hour, and the muddy print Mara had left near the counter. Elinor nearly laughed. He thought this was about untidy records. The clock ticked. She took the Violet's label and turned it over. Her hand shook once. Then it steadied. On the blank side, she wrote, "I chose the history that keeps Mara Bell alive. Ruth Vale died here. I know this is not harmless. If I forget, believe the flower." The first stroke of the 6 o'clock bell sounded through the building. Elinor slid the current edition into the gap at L17. The shelf list gave a soft crack, like a book opening in another room. For one moment, the green volumes on the table went thin as onion skin. Their print loosened. Names faded halfway through sentences. Elinor put the Violet inside the Founder's drawer with the other volumes and turned the key. Then she took a book of wildflowers from the shelf and passed back through the staff gate. "There you are," she said. Mara smiled. "Can I keep it till Saturday?" "You may." At 4 minutes past 6, the reading room clock stopped. The next morning, Elinor opened Brackenhill Public Library at 9. The rain had cleared from the forecourt. A cart went past with milk churns rattling in its bed. Inside, the radiators ticked as they warmed. On her desk lay an envelope from the trustees. Miss Elinor Vale had been appointed Librarian of Brackenhill Public Library. Permanent, subject to the usual conditions. She read it twice, pleased in a quiet, practical way. There would be regular wages. No more acting title. No more waiting for Hargreaves to decide she had misplaced something. Then she opened the accession ledger. A violet slid from between its pages. Pressed flat. Faded purple. Beside it was a paper slip in her own hand. "I chose the history that keeps Mara Bell alive." Elinor read the sentence. She did not understand it. Her fingers found the Founder's drawer key in her pocket, though she could not remember putting it there. Inside, the green volumes were gone. There was only one book. Its cover carried no title. And on the shelf list, between L16 and L18, there was no blank space at all.